Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. I've got the next article in the sequence of 12 articles that I have up on my site at thesleeperagent.com, which is covering aspects of the biological warfare story, which I cover in my book, The Sleeper Agent, The Rise of Lyme Disease, Chronic Illness, and the Great Imitator Antigens of Biological Warfare. So I've put out, I think 3 or 4. Was it 4? I think this is the 4th article. No, wait, this is the 5th. But this article is going to go over why nations hide biological weapons programs under benign research. And I say in the beginning, in my newly released book on the history of stealth biological weapons, I explain the concealed manner in which contemporary biological warfare programs have developed and operated for the last century, secretly, using the cover of benign medical and agricultural research and maintained in such a way as to be indistinguishable from defensive or benign scientific research. I discuss not only how it is done, but also why it is done, so that the uninitiated can grasp with ease. And I know I've gone over this already in the second article about the two classes of biological weapons, those that kill and those that incapacitate, and the value of those that incapacitate being that rather than trying to kill a lot of people, which is almost undesirable if you're trying to overwhelm the country with, if you can have people who are so worn out and tired and exhausted in a state of burnout, somebody has to take care of them. So when you have a whole nation of people who have these neurological diseases and slow chronic diseases, it puts a serious burden on the public health system and the economy. And that's why they are called economic weapons. But in this article, we are covering why they hide all of that biological weapons research under benign research. So they'll hide it, under agricultural problems, or they'll hide it under benign medical or scientific research. And the reason is because biological warfare is seen with disdain. It's seen as a very undesirable form of warfare. If you're the country that's caught using them, you look really bad. Just like the United States looked really bad when they used them in the Korean War in the 1950s. But certainly not the only country to use them. But the whole story kind of makes more sense when you understand what happened to Germany in World War I. Now, in World War I, Germany was caught using both chemical and biological weapons. They were using chemical weapons on the battlefield, and they were using things like glanders and anthrax bacteria. They had a biological sabotage campaign in America in the years leading up to World War I and during World War I. The Germans, they went around infecting the horses that were not only going to be used, as cavalries as transportation for soldiers and such, but also because these horses would also be used for medical purposes like serum and vaccines. So the Germans went around contaminating or infecting the horses at places like the Rockefeller Institute, which would then be used to turn out these serum and other, and vaccines. So the intention was to also get human targets. It wasn't just to make the animals sick for that, in and of itself. And the same was true in World War II for rabbits. In Nazi Germany, they were, I remember Eric Traub had published a paper on the listeriosis of Angora rabbits. And he was saying in that paper that these animals hold significance because they can be used to produce vaccines that will be given to humans. So it was a concern in that sense. The same is true with these horses in World War I. So because of those unconventional weapons used by Germany, the League of Nations sanctioned Germany, and the sanctions were economically crippling and basically devastated Germany. They told Germany, you can't have a military now, because the Treaty of Versailles, it said, it was like the sanctions, and it said that Germany can't have a national military for such and such time period. And what happened was the Germans circumvented that treaty by going to Russia to train, and the Soviet Union gave them a place to train in return for certain, chemical and biological weapons technology. And then once Hitler had built his army up to a considerable degree, in 1933, he brought them all back to Germany and said, now, and he told the League of Nations, fuck you, we're not going to listen, we're not going to do these sanctions, and that's what paved the way for the Third Reich. So biological warfare actually had a big, played a big role in the rise of Nazi Germany. But the thing is that, and that's why they became kind of like the leaders of how to hide those biological weapons programs after World War I. Like Eric Traub, for example, and Insel Reims, which was the agricultural facility that he worked at, they hid a lot of that serious biological warfare research under agriculture and animal disease. Because prying enemy eyes will say, oh, they're just working with foot and mouth disease, and they're just working with, diseases of farm animals, when they were actually working on human diseases at an agricultural facility. Or animal diseases that were adapted to humans. So nobody wanted to be the next Germany and have sanctions and be economically crippled by them because of these unconventional, weapons or special weapons. And I was saying in that other video that it took Germany 92 years to finish paying off their debt, or finish paying off their reparations for those, sanctions in World War I. And they just finished paying it off, I think, in like 2012 for stuff that happened in World War I. So that's why no country wants to be the next Germany. And that's the context for why biological warfare programs are often hidden under benign research, and because they don't want, other countries to see what they're making as far as weapons. So what they do is, because, see, defensive research and offensive research is essentially the same. The only difference is the intention of those utilizing it. So you can get away was saying this is defensive research, even if you're weaponizing things. Just like, in defensive research, they have what is called gain-of-function research, where they're raising the virulence of viruses and pathogens under the pretext of, well, we need to make them as deadly as possible so we can know how to protect against it. And there's a lot of information in my book that covers the way it is done in a very concealed manner, and how here, I will, one second. Oh, sorry. This is my book. I just had to get it. There was a Soviet biological warfare expert named Igor V. Domoradsky, and one thing he said about the concealed manner in which it is done. Hold on one sec. He said something about, yeah, I know where it is. So he's talking about the BTWC. The BTWC was the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention, which was the update to the 1925 Geneva Convention treaty that banned the use and stockpiling of biological weapons. Well, in 1972, when this BTWC was signed, it allowed defensive research, and that actually gave many nations the pretext to actually expand offensive research by just saying it was defensive research. He said, with the signing of the BTWC, biological defense was no longer a priority. Under the cover of the treaty and unknown to the rest of the signatories, a greatly expanded and ambitious bioweapons program would rapidly take root in the USSR. So he's basically, so it was always done under the covers of defensive research, but not only defensive research, but also just regular scientific research. And he's got another quote in here where he's talking about being at a meeting with all these other bioweaponeers. And he's saying how they never called a weapon a weapon. It says, it was therefore interesting to see how Yurikov, he's another bioweaponeer, solved his problems at party meetings. Since only a few party members were admitted to any secret business, maybe 30 out of about 500 people attending, and since builders and laborers were predominant among the communists, everything was said in a figurative language, especially when discussing the results of any scientific work. Instead of calling a spade, as Yurikov would in our own meetings, at party sessions he camouflaged our work by referring to our newly developed vaccines or new methods of treating dangerous diseases. So that's kind of, overall, that's like the rationale, is they hide everything so that it doesn't look like weapons research. And so you'll never, ever, 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 ever see a weapon being referred to as a weapon on paper and or in any kind of discussion that is going to be public record, like some of the agricultural meetings and such that have like that are presented as like conventions and such. Nobody wants to be the next Germany. And that is why it's all hidden under covers. So I think I can just leave it there with this one, since I've kind of already just I kind of already talked about it in that first article about the 2 classes of biological weapons, but I figured I'd just make this its own video. So that is it. And with that said, I think the next one I will do, let's see. I think what the next one I will do is the one about the rise of biological warfare in the wake of the 1918 influenza. Because since we're kind of going over like some of the early stuff in these videos, in these initial videos, I'll just go there and then we'll go from there. So with that said, everybody, take care of yourself, be yourself, build yourself, and I will see you on the other side.
The cliffs he watches, he waits the night to see the day his way. Last call will find us all, but there's a light that leads the way, always.